They called them the inland seas, and the name was earned. Lake Superior alone could swallow a fleet without ceremony, its horizon curving away like an ocean's. To the sailors who crossed them, the Great Lakes were not gentle water. They were weather, distance, and the constant nearness of the rocks. By the middle of the 19th century, commerce ran thick across these waters. Iron ore, timber, grain, and coal moved in the holds of 1,000 vessels. But the shoals waited in the dark, and the fog came without warning. What the shipping lanes needed was light, and so the lighthouses rose. They stood on granite points and sandy spits, on breakwaters and lonely islands far from any town. Some were stout brick towers, others were skeletal iron frames bolted to the reef. Each one marked a danger, and each one needed a keeper. The keeper's life was a life of ritual. Before dark, the lamp was cleaned, the wick trimmed, the reservoir filled with oil. The great lens, cut from crystal in France, was polished until it threw its beam clean across the miles. Then, at dusk, the flame was lit, and the vigil began. It was not romantic work, whatever the postcards suggested. The hours were unrelenting, and the isolation total. A keeper might go weeks without seeing another face, his only company the wind, the gulls, and the endless conversation of the waves against the stones. Winter was the cruelest season. When the lakes iced over and the last ship laid up for the year, the light went dark, and the keeper often went home. But those on the remote stations sometimes stayed, snowbound and silent, waiting for the thaw that would call the freighters back. The families endured it alongside the men. Wives kept the light when illness struck. Children learned to read by the glow of the lamp room. In more than one story, a daughter climbed the tower during a gale and held the flame steady, while her father lay fevered below. For the keeper knew what the darkness cost. When the storms rolled down out of the northwest, the water rose into gray mountains, and men clung to splintering decks somewhere out in the murk. The light was their one fixed thing. To let it fail was unthinkable. There are nights written into the record that still chill the blood. The gale of November 1913 swallowed a dozen ships and hundreds of lives in a single furious weekend. Through all of it, along every shore, the keepers stood their posts and kept the flames burning against the dark. The logbooks tell the quieter truth of the trade. Page after page of tidy handwriting. Wind from the east, fog at 4 bells, lamp lit, all in order. Now and again, a line breaks the routine. A wreck sighted, a boat launched. Survivors pulled from the freezing surf and warmed at the keeper's own stove. Between the storms, there was beauty, too. Sunrises that set the whole lake on fire. Northern lights rippling green above the tower. The keeper often kept a garden in the thin soil, tended chickens, and painted the endless landscape to fill the endless hours. For a time, the service was a proud institution. Keepers wore their uniforms with dignity and passed their knowledge down like a family craft. To hold a light was to hold a trust, and the government inspectors who arrived by boat judged a station by the shine of its brass. But the century that made the keeper would also unmake him. The technology that had once required a human hand began, slowly, to render that hand unnecessary. The change came quietly, one station at a time, like a tide going out. First, the oil lamps gave way to electricity. Then came automatic timers, sun-triggered switches, and radio beacons that never needed trimming or tending. A machine could do at the flick of a relay what a family had once given its whole life to do. One by one, the keepers were sent home. The dwellings emptied. The gardens went to weed. where there had been footsteps on the spiral stairs and the smell of kerosene and coffee. There was now only the hum of an automatic bulb turning on at dusk to no one. By the closing decades of the 20th century, the trade was all but gone. The last keepers retired or were reassigned, taking with them a vocabulary of weather and water that no manual had ever fully captured. A way of living ended without a single funeral. The towers themselves remain, many of them, standing sentinel over the same cold water. Some are museums now, their lens rooms open to tourists in summer. Others crumble on inaccessible reefs, slowly surrendering to the ice and the storms they once defied. And the lakes have not grown gentle. They still take ships. They still swallow the unwary. But the light that answers the dark is unmanned now, tended by circuitry, watched over by no one who feels the fear of the sailors it guides home. So we remember them, the keepers of the inland seas. They asked for little and were given less, and they held their small flames against an enormous night. When the last of them turned off the lamp and closed the door, an entire human calling walked quietly into the past.